This episode was created with the support of Free FM, Hamilton, New Zealand's community access media organisation. Visit us at freefm.org.nz.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rethinking Mental Wellbeing. This is our community podcast where we can talk about everything related to depression and anxiety. So my name is Andre and I want to thank you for being with me over the next half an hour as we share the space of lived experience where we can talk about how to live the best version of our authentic life. So, if you're ready, then I'm ready. Welcome to the podcast. Hello and welcome back to Rethinking Mental Wellbeing. If you are here for the first time, then I welcome you to the show. If you've been here before, then welcome back to the show. You can't really go past any self-help program, course, videos, anything related to self-improvement without coming across the topic of self-talk. And the truth is, we can't have a real conversation about authenticity or even how to express our truth without diving into this topic. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about the way that we talk to ourselves. Why do we talk to ourselves? And we'll also be exploring about how to change the tone and the stories that we use to talk to ourselves in. This is not about learning how to stop negative self-talk though. So in fact, if anyone ever says to you, hey, I'm going to teach you how to stop your negative self-talk, then please walk the other way and do it quickly, because that'll never happen. That can't happen. And in this episode, I'm going to show you why it should never happen. But we can learn by our practices and our tools how we can change the tone of what we say to ourselves and how we say it to ourselves. We spend on average up to 90% of our day inside our head, and we spend on average up to 45% of our day thinking about the past or the future. So that's a lot of thinking time. It'll be fair to say that there are a few universal truths that we need to learn in life. And when they are learned and understood, then these truths will change the game for us as we learn to live authentically, as we learn to get our needs met, to learn who we are and where we fit into this world. So regardless of who you are, regardless of your upbringing or your culture, or even what you've been through in life, there is one particular universal truth that at some point we need to discover. And we need to discover this in order to make our life and our journey towards living authentically a lot easier. So what is this truth? When we learn to get out of our own way, when we learn to stop tripping ourselves up and to stop sabotaging ourselves, then our life, our view and perception of life, and including the perception of ourselves, all become a little bit easier. The journey that takes us towards living out our most authentic life becomes a little bit easier to find and a little bit easier to travel on when we learn to not only get out of our own way and stop tripping ourselves up, but to learn to live in a space where we can become our own allies and learn to get on our own side. We often see life as, it's me against the world. Actually, the more accurate statement to many of us would be, it is me and the world against me. And we learn over time how to become our worst enemy, as we learn the art of how to put ourselves last, learning to say to ourselves that we are unacceptable, that we are unforgivable, or even maybe that we are unlovable. For many of us, we make life extremely difficult, though, as we accumulate all our self-talk, placing them into carefully worded scripts and stories that offer us instructions on how to get through this thing called life, the safest way we know how, the only way we know how. And we try to navigate to find our place, our purpose, and our peace the best way we know how. But in our quest to find our truth, the instructions that we follow sometimes makes our journey a lot harder than what it needs to be. So when we learn this universal truth on how to get out of our own way, how to stop tripping ourselves up, then life starts to be lived a lot more simply. We're in a better position to be able to deal with the complexities of life. And when things become simpler and a little bit easier, they become a lot less complicated. So in this episode, we're going to be exploring some options on how to learn to get out of our own way and to get on our own side, to treat ourselves a bit more kinder, with a bit more compassion as we learn to live more authentically. We have spent years, though, mastering the art of learning to get in our own way. We don't do this intentionally, though. No one has ever said to themselves when they first wake up in the morning, I wonder what I can do that can make my life as hard as possible to live today. Or, what can I do today that makes my suffering stand out more? But our self-talk partially originates as a navigation tool. It's a feature that we use to try and find our way in the world, to try and find where we fit in this world, to try and find our place, our purpose, and our position of where we belong in this strange and unknown and unfamiliar world. We do this from the stories and the scripts that others have been shown about the way the world is, the way they are, and where they see themselves in the world around them. These instructions from other people are both told to us, shown to us, and then interpreted by us and created by us. These are what I call hand-me-down stories or hand-me-down scripts that we pass from one generation to another, that tells us of the lessons that we need to learn by the people that are also doing the best they can with the scripts that were offered to them. But here's the problem. As you were taught how to navigate in this world by people who taught us from the version of truth that was also offered to them, then these stories become immersed into the creation of our stories. Because we had, when we were younger, no choice but to identify their version and our interpretation as the truth, because we have no other point of comparison or no other point of reference to make. And so we use these lessons as a navigation tool that we adopt in our life as we try to make sense of the world around us. And so these stories become interwoven into our inner dialogue, to rehearse and to practice, forming the scaffolding and the framework of our beliefs. And then our beliefs continue by creating the new add-on stories as we build on to our existing ones that we've been taught. We now fulfill those stories by how we live out those stories in our life. The problem is that they're not reliable. They are out of context, and they would often only narrate our tales of defeat and highlight and spotlight our stories of failures. And with these stories, we will often paint them with our own emotions, bringing these stories to life, making them feel very real and very true. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, your status in the world, your upbringing, or even your experiences. Self-talk is the great equalizer. Self-talk will bring the strongest person to their knees, but it can also lift a person to the greatest heights. Self-talk speaks of our greatest victories and our deepest defeats. The question is, which one of these are we paying more attention to? And because self-talk pairs up with our emotions, our scripts and our stories sound very convincing us that we are what we think we are, convincing us that the world is the way the world is, and convincing us that what we say to ourselves is the only truth. Our self-talk is a combination of your experiences, your interpretation of your experiences, the lessons you learn from those experiences, your emotional investment, but also your perception of safety and how safe you feel. I've talked about this in previous episodes that our main goal in life is safety, survival, and security. So why is this important for self-talk? Because everything that you say to yourself and your view of the world will boil down to these three questions. 1. Am I safe? 2. What do I need to do to be as safe as possible? 3. What do I need to do to stop this hunger to get my needs met? And if you listen really closely to your self-talk, if you listen closely to the message and the meaning behind the words that you use, you will hear the part of you that has learnt to do whatever it's had to do to keep you as safe as possible. You may have been in situations when you were younger where you had to grow up too fast, where you had to be the one to care and protect you, when it wasn't our job to do that, when it wasn't your job to do that. But remember this, we don't protect and look after things we don't care about. You may have spent years protecting yourself and looking after yourself the best way that you know how. And maybe as an adult, you've told yourself stories all your life about how dangerous the world is, how dangerous other people are. And so we have to keep people away and never get close to people. If that is something you can relate to, it is because your script and your story is trying the best it can to protect you from harm and to keep you as safe as possible. These stories that you tell yourself that keep reminding you how much you may think you're a failure, about how worthless you are compared to other people, may have been a lesson that you learnt because that was someone else's script, someone else's hand-me-down. But you want to know why it still hurts so much. Do you want to know why there's so much emotion tied to that? Because there's a part of you, even though you've ended up believing those stories, that always whispers to you that this is not your truth. Those scripts and stories that have been told to you through the narrative of other people's fear, hurt, their own suffering, and their own pain has been projected onto you, the younger version of you. And so you did the best you could to make sure that you were as safe as possible. Every one of us is born with a need to learn to live to our truth. In other words, to be authentic. And anything that goes against that is going to cause us friction. Another name for this is what we call suffering. And the further away we are from our authentic calling or living to our truth, the harder it is for us. But as an adult, the same story and script we learned as a child is trying to protect us as an adult, is still trying to keep us safe. But now it freezes us in time as we get stuck in our scripts that keep us from our truth. So we all have a theme for our stories. Is our story, our self-talk, and how we narrate those stories to ourselves, either our wound story, our protective story, or our authentic story? Maybe your self-talk and your narrative of life has a focus and a spotlight of attention on your wounds that you're trying to protect and look after. Maybe your story is about whatever you needed to do to be as safe as you could, to look after the hurt parts of you, the wounded parts of you. Maybe your wound story is your way of trying to get your needs met. In other words, if your wound story is the only way you know how to feel that you belong, to feel significant, to feel valued, is to stay in your wound story because that's what gets you your version of those things from other people, people who may empathize with you, who show you compassion, who show you what it feels like to be accepted, valued, to feel significant. But that comes at a cost of always feeling that you have to live within your wound story. In other words, you may always feel a need to stay wounded. Maybe your wound story is about not allowing people to get close to you, that you may say to yourself, in no way, at any time, is anyone allowed to see the vulnerable part of me, the hurt part of me, or the pain, or even the suffering side of me. So I have to, at all costs, protect that part of me from being hurt even more. So now I will keep people away, never allowing people to get close to me, because if they get too close, they may see the vulnerable, the wounded part, the scared part, and the frightened part. And that, to me, would be unbearable. So now I have to do whatever it takes to not let people see that wounded part of me. What you are doing when you're doing this is you're not hating on yourself. You are trying to protect yourself. So remember the rule. You don't protect things you don't care about. If I'm creating my story and self-talk around my psychological wound, then maybe my environment around me is designed to always make sure that I stay wounded. Because that may be the way that I feel significant, that I'm showing compassion or kindness or even a sense of belonging from other people. And this happens when we've told ourselves that we can only get these needs met if I stay in my wound story. And when this happens, you will stay in your wound story. But now your authentic self, your true self, is trapped in that story, unable to be expressed. Maybe the theme of your story is your authentic story. This is the story that we're drawn to. This is the story that we measure our other stories against. In order to find and live out your authentic story, we need to understand and recognize that there are some scripts and some stories that we've interpreted through our self-talk as still trying to protect us, still trying to look after us, still trying to keep us safe. But now as an adult, we can say to the younger version of ourselves, I got you. I will protect you. I will treat you with the same kindness and compassion that you are craving for. When we can learn to parent, guide, and to accept the part of us that we're trying to protect, the part of us that may have grown up too fast, the part of you that did whatever it needed to do to feel safe, the hurt part, the vulnerable part, that there's also a part of you that needs the most compassion from you to be heard so it can heal. Another question that we ask ourselves is, what part do we play in our story? Are we the victim? Are we the villain? Are we the hero? Or are we the rescuer? So self-talk is reinforcing the beliefs about the stories that we've created. It's about the emotion that are attached to these stories that give life and energy and provides meaning to the words that we've used, all for the purpose of trying to protect yourself and keep yourself as safe as possible. And another thing we need to consider is, what is the title that we've given your storybook? Because whatever your title is, then all the chapters underneath it will be an extension of that title. This was my title many years ago. Andre the Wounded, Andre the Worthless, Andre the Story of Defeat. The story title is a little bit different these days, and now my title is Andre the Seeker of Truth. When we start to see self-talk as the negotiator between our emotions, our beliefs, the words we use, and our actions, when we start to speak kindly to ourselves, when we learn that we are not our own enemy, because we tried the best we could, we can start to treat ourselves a little bit kinder. It may be useful to know that for a lot of us, a lot of our self-talk, this includes emotions and feelings, is nothing more than just noise. They're always in the background, not quite on the right frequency or station that is in tune with our authentic sound and signal. This means the amount of noise pollution or information or noise beliefs and self-talk that we have often disrupts a clear signal towards our true self. So imagine you have one of these old-style radios that you have to manually turn the dial to tune into the stations. Anything outside the right frequency that picks up the clear signal is going to sound static with a lot of noise. But of course, we don't settle for the noise. We don't resign to the fact that we're never going to find the right frequency. So like the radio, we are designed to find our right frequency. a frequency that leads us towards our authentic life, to be able to live out our truth, to get our needs met. And any sound outside that is potentially just noise. So we call this the signal-to-noise ratio. If our inner dialogue and emotions are overwhelming and chaotic, if our outer noise is overwhelming and chaotic, then it disrupts the signal that we need to hear that moves us towards living our authentic nature. If your day is consumed by feelings of overwhelm and chaos, it may be helpful to go somewhere quiet and calm and peaceful, whether it's in nature or just somewhere out of your sensory stimulation. You've now found a place where you're out of the noise and you're in the right environment to hear the right frequency. This is picking up the right signal for you. So here's some other examples of things that will help you find the right frequency for you. Live into your values, getting enough sleep, eating the right foods, exercising or movement, connection. All of these 5 things are what we call the staple diet of learning to tune into the right frequency instead of listening to the noise of our internal or external environment. So that's all I've got for this episode. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you've got something useful from this discussion. And if you have any questions you would like us to discuss on future episodes, then please email me at rethinkingmentalwellbeing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. So until then, go well, go in peace, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
This Free FM podcast was brought to you with support from New Zealand On Air.